The hosts feel it would be a little unkind to present this podcast without just a word of friendly warning. We are about to unfold the story of Frankenstein, a man of science who sought to create a man after his own image without reckoning upon God. It is one of the strangest tales ever told. It deals with the two great mysteries of creation, life and death. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you. So if any of you feel that you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now's your chance to. Well, we've warned you.
Hello and welcome once again to the Frankencast. I'm the mad scientist Anthony Bowman. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm joined as always by...
Estoy el extraño en traje de tigre que es Eric Velasquez. My pronouns are also he, him. By the way, what I should have been saying there is I'm the weird guy in the tiger outfit. So let me know if I got that wrong.
I wondered where you were going to go with this one, and you found like the only bit of levity in this movie. So
yep, the only one. And it's kind of early to talk about it, but the moment I saw that guy, I'm like, he's sketchy. He is sketchy, and I was not wrong.
Yeah. So I guess before we get into this, we should say
content warnings.
Yeah, this movie has a couple instances of sexual assault, and also just a lot of instances of people sort of controlling other people and taking away their bodily autonomy.
Consent is not asked for or given.
Yeah,
many
and
times.
it's this movie would be a hard watch on a normal week, but we are watching this last week the Roe v. Wade thing happened, and so if this doesn't sound like something you want to deal with at the moment, we understand.
No hard feelings on this one. You could go ahead, turn us off, walk away, go enjoy yourself, do what you need to do to relax.
Yeah, we did not know what this movie was when we got into it, but it feels kind of fitting to do this movie right now. Like it kind of speaks to a lot of what's going on right now. So it was kind of I don't know if serendipity is the word, considering how unpleasant, but it's fitting. I'll say that.
Yeah, it's pretty wild that this came out in 2011, 2012.
Yeah,
2011. Yeah. So, all right, let's kick this bad boy off. We're in, it's actually telling the future for the time, Toledo, Spain, not Ohio, 2012. We look in on the El Cigarral, which is going to be a little clinic, basically.
Yeah. And we start out, we've got there's like a woman, she's doing yoga, and she's like in a flesh tone leotard that's like full body, like covers her fingers, her toes, it's like the whole deal.
Right. Of course, accentuates her breasts because, you got to.
Yeah, it's got like little stitching on there to kind of really show that. So we see that, and it kind of cuts between her doing that and someone else sort of making breakfast in the kitchen. You
right,
just kinda
over a
see
table
hands.
full of hormones.
Yeah.
So that, kind of gives away the farm a little bit.
Yeah, and so she's like in the kitchen, she's like opening up little pills and dumping the powder into orange juice and stirring it up. There's like a main housekeeper lady and then sort of like a maid or like assistant, and they put the tray of breakfast on the dumbwaiter and send it to our yoga performing woman.
By the way, did you know what book they put on that little tray?
I didn't catch that.
So, okay, I'm trying to remember exactly what the name of it they used in the movie. Well, basically it translates to The Runaway by Alice Munro.
Okay.
All right, so let's take a little sidetrack down this little road. So it's a book of short stories, right?
Okay.
The one in particular, I just wanted to see if this had anything really to do with the movie. Basically, it's a couple people who really love horses, fall in love, the handsome man, the beautiful woman. The woman thinks the man's family's a little bit too materialistic. She runs away with the guy. They go elope or whatever. Turns out the guy is emotionally and physically abusive. Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, pretty much. Yeah, they become hostile, and in the end, the guy kills... I don't know. I guess the guy kills the girl. Pretty much is how it ends.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that does seem like it might be, nodding to what's
Related.
going on in this a little bit.
Interesting, though. Sorry for that sidetrack.
No, that is really interesting. And I guess before we go too much further, I guess we should also, like, without giving away the ending in case you're just listening along without seeing the movie, there's some gender type stuff in this, and like we're gonna kind of use the pronouns that make sense for the moment, and then we'll get to all of that as we get there, just so that we're aware of that and the kind of dicey situation this is. Yeah. Okay, so they send this breakfast tray to her, and we'll find out that her name is Vera Cruz.
Vera Cruz!
And so she gets the breakfast and then, like, buzzes on the intercom and says she wants some more art supplies.
Yeah, she's been working on these weird little head things and putting little bits of cloth on them, I believe.
Yeah, so, like, obviously the title's The Skin I Live In, and, you see that she's in a weird skin suit, and then you see that she's making these sort of, like, dolls out of, like, different kinds of fabric that she's, like, gluing onto heads and stuff. So there's a lot of skin stuff going on in this.
Yeah, you could call this a skin flick. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we got to take the laughs where we can get them in this one.
We do. We have to build them in at points.
She also asks if she can have a needle and thread for a new craft project, and the woman on the other end is like, surely you're joking. And she's like, oh, yeah, I'm just kidding. Of course, no needle and thread. That's fine. Just whatever I can get. Art supplies is fine. And then we cut away to a doctor giving a lecture in front of, like a theater of other med students and doctors. This is Antonio Banderas, and he is kind of giving a lecture about burn victims and
and our
the
face
special
is giving us our identity, right?
Yeah. He's talking about like the special care, and like that it's not just about healing the wounds, it's about giving them a new life, letting them sort of be normal again. He talks about that, like, he's done like 3 facial reconstructions.
Right, 3 face-offs.
Yeah, they're like the most moving experiences he's ever had in his life. So it's really important to him to like give people their lives back. So it seems like he's very altruistic in this moment. Then he gets home and he opens this like sort of fancy briefcase, and inside it's like a cooler.
Yeah.
And it contains a bag of blood.
By the way, he just came out of like the maternity ward for some reason, and the name on the bag is actually a Spanish pharmaceutical company called Secavita.
Okay.
And yeah, they cover things mainly pharmaceuticals for childbirth and pregnancy. It's a real thing, apparently. So.
It seems to be like, it's never outright said, but I think this is like stem cell type. It's like it's fresh infant blood or something. It's
Heavily implied.
Yeah, so he looks at it under a microscope. I think that's all he does now, but like later he'll run it through a centrifuge and stuff.
By the way, who has such a badass lab in their basement? Well, this guy.
Yeah, this is like the most high-tech sort of Frankenstein type lab we've seen. Like it's top of the line.
By the way, his name's Robert Langard, I believe. Yeah, is the character's name.
So he goes upstairs, and as he's walking, he has this huge sort of mansion, and throughout the house you'll see a lot of really large paintings, specifically like nude women paintings, which kind of ties into this sort of like it's all about flesh and skin. There's just skin everywhere. Yeah. And then he goes into like a room, and there's another what appears to be a painting, a huge screen on the wall of another nude woman from the back.
Yeah, it's her backside, yeah.
Yeah, and then we realize that this is not a painting, this is a surveillance screen.
Right! The biggest one you'll ever see. What is it? Probably 116 inch or something crazy like that.
Oh, yeah, it's massive. It like covers a whole wall, basically. Yeah. But, I mean, this is the woman that we saw at the beginning, Vera, but she's not in her skin suit. She's actually naked here. And so he kind of like goes through a door and, goes into her room, her area, and sees her from the front. She's got cuts on her wrists and cuts around her breasts.
Well, not only that, but he's like, hey, Vera, I brought some opium.
Yeah, he's definitely into the opium. But yeah, he's approaching from behind, so he thinks she's fine. And then, when he sees her from the front, she's got all these... It's strange because they're like cuts. They look more like scrapes. They're not like open wounds, but you can tell somebody has been like, she's been trying to hurt herself, basically.
Yeah, it almost looks like she tried to cut her breasts off at the top, and then, as Anthony said, going to cut a couple other places as well.
Yeah. Then, he kind of like moves her to like a medical area and is like cleaning her cuts, and he kind of comments, and he's like talking about how her skin is so soft. It's softer than he thought it was, and she's kind of like,
kill me.
Yeah, when is this going to end? Like, why won't you just let me die? And he's like, if you really wanted to die, you would have gone for the jugular. So, not the best response to that.
Right. He's stone cold, but then again, a lot of people in this movie are stone cold.
Yeah.
So
yeah, he's kind of working on that, and he keeps commenting about how soft the skin is. That seems to be like the main takeaway from this. And then we see like a little bit later on, a man arrives with another delivery, and he says this is blood taken from an animal right as it died. So he runs it through a centrifuge, and it's kind of cool that I'm sure this really happens, but just like this close-up shot, you get to see like after it comes out of the centrifuge, it's like a layer of blood, and then there's a clear layer, and then a yellow layer on top of like various I don't know, hemoglobins and whatever, and he like runs the needle down and gets just the middle layer and sucks up whatever that is. That's what he's trying to extract from this animal.
I think it's interesting then that it cuts to a few things of like beehives and colony of roaches as he basically then goes to remove a petri dish. And there's something weird in that petri dish. It kind of looks like skin or cloth or something.
Yeah, this bit is really like, this movie's all strange across the board, but this scene is particularly strange because it's like a petri dish, and he like uses like little like tweezers and lifts up this very, very paper. It looks like wet tissue paper almost. Right. It's just so thin, and he starts like laying it on a very anatomically correct mannequin body. It's like a headless body, but has arms and legs and like nipples and genitals and stuff. It's very, it's very
anatomically correct.
Yeah, and he's just like, he puts a piece on the stomach, and he like takes little like Q-tips, and he smooths it out really carefully, and then we kind of see him continue this process slowly and just like putting a whole layer of skin on this mannequin, and then like
cuts away to Vera.
Yeah, it's like a really nice dissolve shot that like, it's so perfect that for a second you're like, was that body her? But it was just a mannequin, but I'm not really sure what purpose it served to put it on the mannequin first if you're gonna have to take it completely off the mannequin and put it on Vera.
Right. Maybe he was practicing his technique. That's what I'll say. And he used good stuff on her.
Yeah, but it's a really, really well composed shot, and the nude mannequin going to the nude Vera, like it's seamless and like a way that's like really beautiful but also creepy and like equal measure, which is exactly how to describe this movie.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, after he's done that, and Vera's wanting to know, hey, are all the burns, she says burns, I imagine she means scars, if they're going to be gone now. And he assures her, oh yeah, they are. But then he decides he's going to bust out a blowtorch to test her reflexes.
Yeah. He like just holds a blowtorch to her skin, and like it is fine. Like it does not
doesn't burn.
Yeah. So yeah, like clearly that's the whole thing. This synthetic skin, the whole like your skin's so soft. That wasn't like usually if you touch someone's skin and say it's soft, it's a compliment. But no, in this case, he's like, it's too soft. I need to strengthen it up so that you can't cut it.
Gotta toughen that up. Yeah. Well, we're going to find out what that skin's made out of a little bit later. But yeah, he also tests it out with a mosquito bite. Seems like they can't get through. It's too thick.
Yeah, and then a little later he'll even say that the mosquito doesn't even seem to want to because of the smell. Like it's a different smell than human flesh. So yeah, this is the Frankenstein, obviously, and he's trying to make perfect human flesh that's indestructible. That's his way of preserving life, I guess.
Yeah, so we go to another scene where he's talking about that skin, and he's named the skin Gal. Mm-hmm. That's a weird name. Okay, we've got a gal on the table. I guess maybe that's what it's for. It's odd that he would, gender his skin, but okay.
And eventually he'll be talking to, I think it's the president of the university, and he asks why they chose the name Gal, and he says that was his wife's name, and she died in a burning car.
Oh no, that's why he made it blowtorch resistant.
Yeah. So you can see, again, Frankenstein, like dead mom, have to preserve life, wife die in a car accident, make indestructible skin. It may, it's very similar thought process going on here. Mm-hmm. So he does this presentation, and then afterwards is talking to the university president, and ultimately the president's like, you can't keep doing it. Like this violates so many scientific ethics.
Right.
Transgenetics is what they keep talking about, and it's like that's a level that the scientific community is not okay.
We're not ready for it.
Yeah. And he kind of is like, okay, like it's, this was just a passion project because of my wife, I wanted to honor her. I'll stop. No big deal.
But hey, real quick before you go, what did you make that skin out of? Like just for curiosity's sake. Well, turns out he's been splicing human and pig DNA together. So there's that.
Yeah.
That's what the blood was from. It was from a pig, so it makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, he said like pigs have tougher skin, so that's where that comes in.
So there you go. It's all coming together.
Yeah, so then he heads back home and goes back into his room where he's got the Vera Vision TV, and he's watching her as she reclines on this fainting couch and is reading. Now she's back in her leotard, and he pulls out this little small box from a cubby hole and enters the room, and he's like, brought some opium, you wanna...
Right.
You wanna...
We didn't get to smoke this earlier, so we're cracking it open now.
Yeah. And she's like, so do you have any more improvements for me? And he's like, nope, I'm all finished. You're complete. You can now boast that you have the best skin in the world.
Right. That's kind of exciting for her.
Yeah. And she's like, well, if I'm done, like, can the experiments end? Can we live together as normal people? And it's kind of implied, like, as lovers, like maybe I don't need to be in this little gilded cage where you can watch me and observe, my progress. Like, maybe I can be a real partner to you. Like, she says equals at one point. He's very uncomfortable about that. Like, he... At first is like, let's not get into stuff like that. Let's just smoke some opium. Like, right. I don't want to talk about this.
Well, she kind of also implies she wants to be part of the experiments going forward, like to help him on other people.
Yeah, and he's
like, nah.
Yep, he feels like she's being too pushy, and he like rushes out of the room and leaves.
But before he goes, she's managed to get a hold of his opium lighter and threatens to burn the whole house down, baby.
Yeah, and she does it in this way that's almost like...
It's kind of like flirting, but not.
Yeah, and that she wants to instill trust in him. Like, you accidentally left this, and if you didn't trust me, I could have done something dangerous. But I'm showing that I am trustworthy. I'm giving this back to you. I'm not going to secret it away and do something when you're gone. So clearly she's kind of like playing a long game here of trying to get him comfortable and trusting so that, she doesn't have to be sealed away all the time.
All right. Well, of course, that's definitely not exactly the way to instill trust. So he's like, nah, I'm going to leave. But it seems like he's forgotten the key. However, Vera seems to know exactly what pocket he keeps that key in. And she points it out to him.
Yeah. Their relationship is strange because there's some... It almost feels like passion, but there's definitely some like animosity going on as well. Right. And we'll see more about what that's about as we go. But yeah, at this point, it's just like, what is going on here? And so yeah, he does. He leaves her, locks her in, and goes and speaks to like the head housekeeper woman.
Yeah, Maria,
yeah. So he's talking to her, and she's like, why did you give her your wife's face? Like, you shouldn't have done that.
Right.
What are you going to do now that you're done? Like, you are either stuck having to lock her up forever, or you're going to have to kill her. You can't let her go at this point.
Right. You've gone too far with everything.
Yeah, but he's like, no, this one's a survivor. Like, she's going to be okay. At this point, it feels like maybe he's done this before, but as we get more backstory, I don't think he has.
It's also implied that she's going to try and kill herself, and history is kind of, it has a way of repeating itself that way.
Yeah.
That's weird. Okay.
Very true. So, but, Maria is very concerned that, like, he's developed feelings for her and that his feelings are going to consume him. And he's like, I don't know how you have all this insight because I'm not even really sure what my feelings are about this situation yet. Like, I'm very conflicted about everything and I'm trying to figure it all out. But if you're nervous, why don't you go ahead, just fire the servants. It'll just be me and you and her, and,
don't hire anyone back.
Yeah, we'll figure this all out. Then we cut to, like, the next day, and all the servants are, like, leaving.
But there's this weird, sketchy guy who rolls up in a tiger costume. He kind of looks like a mixture between a tiger and Saitama from One Punch Man.
Yeah, he's got it's almost a leotard kind of tiger costume. It's got a tail.
It's a catsuit. But
then he also has like he has a mask that covers part of his face, and then like face paint that covers the rest of it. Mm-hmm. It's very strange. And he like comes up to the gate and is like talking through the intercom and says he's looking for his mother. Mm-hmm. There's kind of a back and forth between him and Maria, where she's like, your mother's not here. All the servants left, and
well, what do you do when you're pretty sure your mom's there, but she's not acknowledging you? Well, of course, you turn around, drop trowel, and reveal your birthmark that's on your butt.
Yeah.
Well, that seems to work because she knows that's Zika.
Yeah. So he is Maria's son, and at first she's like, she lets him to the gate and is talking to him in the doorway and is like, you shouldn't come in here. Like, you're not welcome. You need to go.
Robert will kill you if he sees you here.
Yeah, but he kind of just forces himself into the house anyway. And,
it's because he's hungry. He's got to get a bite to eat before he goes.
Yeah. And, of course, she's, what does any good mother do? She's going to fix him a meal. So he's sitting there eating, and she's kind of just talking to him or whatever. And a news report comes on about a jewelry store that was robbed, and they have surveillance video. And who should be on that?
And lo and behold, yeah. who's front and center.
Yeah. So obviously this is why Zeka has shown up. He is on the run from the law, and he wants to blackmail Robert into changing his face in some way that's so that he's not recognizable from the surveillance video.
Yeah, he wants one of those fancy face transplants that Robert likes to do.
Yeah.
But he's actually going to kidnap his own mom and hold her hostage for the blackmail. That's really good.
Yeah, he's like, "What, do you think that would work?" And she's like, I don't think that that's going to really do anything.
Let's revisit this one. Yeah.
But then he sees Vera on a monitor screen, and he's like, that's interesting.
She looks an awful lot like somebody I used to know.
Yeah. And he's so intrigued by that he licks the screen.
Yeah. It's gross.
Yeah, so you already know this interaction that's coming up is not going to be good.
So he seemed sketchy from the word go, and now he's just building on the sketch.
Yeah. So Maria actually says, like, get out or I'll shoot you. And he's like, you're not going to shoot your son. Yeah. And her response is, like, ice cold. She's like, you're not my son. I just gave birth to you.
Right. Ouch.
Yeah, that is harsh.
Right.
So they end up kind of struggling over the possession of the gun, and it goes off, but it just, like, breaks a glass. It doesn't hurt either of them.
Right.
And then, Vera on the other side of the house hears the gunshot and starts, like, calling over the intercom, like, hey, I heard a sound. Is everything okay? But, obviously Maria is busy.
Right. Well, she's being tied up by Zeka.
Yeah, so he ends up, like, binding and gagging her, and then just starts kind of, like, searching through the house, looking for Vera, and ultimately he ends up finding the door that she's behind, but, of course, it's locked.
It was interesting that when she heard this was going on, she basically aggressively tried to do yoga. Yeah. Like, she's like, or I should say probably nervously tried to do yoga in a very fast fashion.
Yeah.
She was going through all of her poses, and it's like,
Yeah, but since the door is locked, he goes back to Maria and removes her gag and, asks where the key is. Mm-hmm. And she's kind of resistant, but, it's quickly like, you have to tell me or, I'm going to hurt you. So
By
she
the way,
finally...
this gag is a really long napkin. Like, the longest napkin.
Yeah, and it's one of those deals where it's like, he's like shoving it into her mouth and then like, tying over so that it holds it in place. Mm-hmm. And, she's like, please don't shove that whole thing back in my mouth again. Like,
he's like, nope, I'm going to do it.
Yeah. But yeah, she does reveal that the key is like, it's in a drawer at the very back in an envelope labeled something else. It's, cleverly hidden. So he gets the key, goes back upstairs, unlocks the door.
Well, turns out Vera's no fool because she's waiting. And as soon as he tries to open the door, she kicks it, knocking him down, and she tries to run over him. But unfortunately, Zeka's too quick for that. He grabs her. This is your first content warning.
Yeah, he catches her and pins her down. And then, like, he says, like, last time I saw you, you were burning like a torch. How did you survive? Mm-hmm. This scene's really strange because he recognizes her. She doesn't seem to recognize him. And there's also, I don't know that I can possibly describe how uncomfortable this is, but he like puts his mouth around her mouth in a way where like their teeth are touching.
Right. It's almost like he's biting on her chin.
Yeah, it's very strange. And honestly, I guess the thing that it most resembles is when you see like cats fighting, and they kind of like bite each other on like the back of the neck and stuff. Like it feels very animalistic. And of course, he's dressed up like a tiger, so it kind of makes sense that, and I guess we've got her having like pig skin. So there's a lot of human animal hybrid kind of stuff going on in this moment.
That makes sense. But not only is he doing that, he's starting to grind on her.
Yeah. Eventually he rips open her sort of like flesh leotard, exposing her breasts, and like he's like, actually, I'm gonna kidnap you and use you to blackmail Robert.
Yeah, you're better than Maria. Yeah.
Yeah, but first, of course, he has to drag her upstairs and he rapes her. And, obviously we don't need to go in further detail here, but, like, obviously it's unpleasant, and Maria is seeing it all on the monitor screen. So she knows what's happening. Of course, she can't do anything. She's still bound and gagged.
Well, we've gotten good news for that, because Robert is home.
Yeah. So he walks in and sees this happening on the screen, sees Maria tied up, and immediately runs upstairs.
Well, he grabs his pistol.
Yeah. So, yeah. So he runs upstairs and just, no questions, obviously. There's no need to be like, hey, freeze. Like, he just shoots.
Zeka's also kind of passed out because he's did what he came to do, and yeah.
Yeah. And from downstairs, Maria is watching, and she's saying, kill them both. But, he doesn't. He kills Zeka. And then afterwards, we see Maria, she's cleaning up, and Vera is smoking opium.
Right.
And they're... Yeah, and they're kind of having, they haven't really had a conversation other than, like, asking for art supplies.
Well, this isn't surprising how this ended, because Robert and Zeka have been playing at killing each other ever since they were little kids.
Yeah. Maria's like, they're actually brothers from different fathers, but they don't know that. But they've always had this sort of sibling rivalry without realizing what's going on. And she kind of goes into detail that, like, so...
She had an affair with...
Yeah, Robert's father was her boss, and Robert's quote-unquote mother was sterile, so when Maria had the baby, they basically just took the baby from her.
Right. By the way, the adopted mother, basically, was really chill about that whole thing.
Yeah, about the affair, yeah, she's just like, well, then,
that'll be
by
my
rights,
baby.
It's my husband's baby, so it's my baby, but Maria is still there as the housekeeper, so she's like, even though it was their baby, I still raise Robert as my own. Right. So, you have one of those situations where it's like, you've got the rich family and the rich son, and then the poor family and the poor son, right. And so obviously they're going to have a rivalry, not knowing that they're actually from the same mother.
Well, even Zeka, she says Zeka was, he was born from a servant guy who just kind of left town one day.
Yeah.
But then, of course, she blames herself. Why? Because her entrails had insanity in them. Her entrails are insane, Anthony. No.
Yeah, so she's like, they're both clearly crazy, and it's my fault. I shouldn't,
I'm the common denominator, I guess, is what she's saying.
And Vera's like, he talked like he knew me. And, Maria's like, yeah, he thought you were Robert's wife. Zeka lived far away for a while.
Well, he was a drug runner since he was 7 years old.
Yeah, so clearly he was like being used as a mule and just kind of like grew up in this, in this organized crime life. But then like he ended up showing up at Robert's family's house, needing a place to hide, and Robert's wife, Gal, fell in love with him.
Maria decided to put him in the outhouse first. That's where he's going to hide. He's going to be in the shitter, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. But yeah, ultimately Gal ends up running into him, and she falls in love with him, and they try to run away, but as they're escaping, the car crashed, and Gal was seriously burned in the wreck, right. And should have died.
And Zeka ran off like a coward.
Yeah. But Robert managed to save her and, like, slowly went through the process of trying to heal her. Like, she's full, like, third-degree burns, full body, is just, head to toe burnt to a crisp. But Robert is, like, dedicated to, he's got this plastic surgery background.
Yeah, he's going to get her back to where she needs to be, right?
Yeah. And Maria says this great line, the things that a madman's love can do.
Right. No doubt.
Yeah.
Well, apparently they had a little girl together. This would be Gal and Robert, named Norma. And one day, Gal heard Norma singing a beautiful song, and that helped her get up, had the inspiration to go. Unfortunately, she saw herself in the mirror, and she wasn't 100% just yet.
Yeah, like she opened, because her room, like she's got shutters on the inside covering up the windows, but she's opened them to look out into the yard, and she sees her reflection in the glass of the window. And yeah, I mean, this is what we've seen many times before. Like someone who appears monstrous, seeing their own image for the first time is upsetting. It's a scarring thing to experience, and especially in this case where she had a previous life, as quote-unquote normal. So she sees this and jumps out the window to her death.
Yeah. By the way, can we note also scarring her daughter emotionally pretty severely?
Yeah, her daughter who's outside, she heard the daughter singing
right.
in the yard and then jumps into the yard, so yeah. Can
we talk about how Norma doesn't have like an easy bake oven? She has an easy bake stovetop. Like there's a small fire going under this thing. Like, what are they doing in Spain?
Yeah, trusting kids with...
Right.
Yeah.
Fair enough, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, and then Maria even goes so far, like, she's like, so years later, Norma jumped to her death from the same window. She says it in, like, she went down the same road or something. She kind of says it metaphorically, but then says it explicitly. Yes, she also committed suicide from the same window. So about that time, Robert gets back home. So he has been gone disposing of Zeka's body.
And he did everything Mom said for him to do. The prayers... cut him up and threw him into the ocean, I believe.
Yeah, so Zeka is off the board, basically. Then we cut to Robert and Vera in bed together. And they're kind of just, they're talking a little bit, they're kind of cuddling, and then, like, it looks like they're maybe about to have sex, and she's like, can we wait until tomorrow? And she says, Zeka messed me up really bad.
Yeah. He was a little bit too rough, of course.
Yeah. So he's like, of course, so they just kind of like spoon and kind of go to sleep. And
yeah, he wants her to feel comfortable.
Yeah. And it seems it
seems
this movie,
sweet, but yeah.
Yeah, it goes back and forth. It's hard to, but like, yeah, in this moment, he seems understanding of her situation and obviously is not pushing. So in this moment, good for him.
Right. But
in this moment.
Yeah. But there's a lot. Yeah. We'll learn some more stuff later. As a matter of fact, we're going to go 6 years earlier.
As we get a title card.
Yes, exactly. We get some sexy jazz, some of that's going on. Then we get Robert at a wedding with apparently some George Clooney-looking dude named Nico and his friend Casilda.
Mm-hmm. And Robert's talking to this woman who he had done some plastic surgery for her in the past. So she's like really grateful. Like, I don't think I would have been married today if it weren't for what you did for me and stuff. And so, they're just kind of chatting, and at this moment, Norma is alive, and she's on the other side of the room at the reception, and she's kind of chatting with some other young people.
And also, it looks like she gets eyes for this one gentleman.
Yeah. There's a couple different young men and women, and they're all kind of talking. But yeah, you get that like sort of rom-com-ish moment where they're both kind of looking at each other. You can tell like these two are into each other. And then there's like a sort of extended scene of just like people dancing, enjoying themselves at the reception.
Yeah, get some nice Caribe music going on.
Yeah. So everybody's having a great time, and then at some point Robert walks outside into this beautiful garden. It's European like palatial garden, like a whole yard that's all it's just gorgeous. And
it's
it's
kind
night.
Of garden that has its own forest. And as a matter of fact, a lot of people like that forest because there's a lot of people having sex in that forest.
Yeah, he's kind of wandering around, and it's just like young couples, paired off here and there.
Well,
throughout the
sometimes
woods, just kind of
tried off.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, and he's just, letting them do their thing, kind of steering clear. And then he sees on a path his daughter's shoes. Mm-hmm. And then he walks a little further and he sees his daughter's sweater.
And then there's a guy who rolls by on a motorcycle.
Yeah. He ends up finding Norma. She's leaning up against a tree.
By the way, another content warning in case you were listening.
Yeah, if you're not picking up on where this is going, yeah. So she's unconscious. She is clothed. Her sweater was laying, but she's still wearing like a camisole kind of shirt and a skirt and everything. But he kind of like wakes her up, and she is confused.
She freaks out. Yeah.
Yeah, she wakes up and is scared and kind of screaming, and like she doesn't know where she is, and like clearly the thing that happened to her right before she went unconscious is it's coming back to her memory and in a painful way. Yeah. So then we cut back to sort of present day, and you got Robert in bed next to Vera. There's just that little brief thing, and then we're back
where he cuddles up to her.
Yeah. It's just like it seems to be a nice little moment with them.
Right.
And then we're at a new scene, and it's like a women's clothing store.
Well, the dissolve is really cool because like it zooms in on her face, and then another face appears, kind of looking at her. But yeah, it dissolves to a younger man in a women's clothing store.
Yeah, and like he's talking to another woman there who at first I thought was a customer, but she's actually a clerk that also works there.
Yeah, Christina.
And he's like flirting with her in a way that's like it's a little bit too aggressive.
Yeah.
Like he's like, here, why don't you try on this dress? I think you'd look really good in it. And she's like, if you like that dress so much, why don't you put it on yourself?
Yeah. It seems like he's considering this, but then he's like, hey, why don't you like me?
And she mentions that she's a lesbian. She's just not interested in him at all.
Yeah. But he's got an idea that'll fix that. He's got this nice little pill that may change her mind about that.
Yeah, it's like he's implying like a Spanish fly, kind of thing that like, maybe this will, it's that shitty straight dude thing of like, you just haven't been with the right guy. Like I can turn you or whatever. Yeah. So he's the guy that Norma was sort of like looking longingly at the reception.
Turns out his name's Vicente.
Yeah. Then we get this little brief moment where like an older man and a younger man enter the shop, and they're like, we want to sell, or the older man's like, I want to sell my wife's clothes.
Right.
She's gone missing. Yeah, it's this weird sort of like gag that's, he's like, she's gone missing. And they're like, oh no, what's going on?
Well, first mom, Vicente's mom, makes a kind of fatphobic statement about not taking larger women's dresses.
Yeah.
But then, going back to it, she's like, hey, so what happened? Like, did she pass, or did she disappear, or just leave you? And he's like, a little bit both. She abandoned me and left me.
Yeah, and he's like, yeah, she does this a lot. It's whatever.
Right.
But like, when she comes back next time, she's gonna be naked because she's not gonna have any clothes. Yeah. So then we cut back to the wedding, and we see Vicente walking with Norma into the garden. He asks her if she's on pills. And she's like, oh, yes, and she lists a series of, mental health meds.
Yeah, Cipralex, Deprax, Trincamycin, Rohypnol, and Lyrica.
Yeah. So she's on some intense meds, and he's like, oh, cool, I'm high as hell, too. Right. And she's like, what?
I'm just stoned off this pill that I tried to give a lesbian earlier,
Yeah.
Jeez.
So, they keep walking, and then she takes off her shoes and then kind of starts removing her sweater, and she's like, I wish that we could be naked all the time. I hate the feeling of clothes on my skin. It's just so restrictive. Yeah. And he takes this as an invitation. And so he starts taking off the rest of her clothes.
But she's kind of like, what the fuck is happening? But she doesn't say it, but...
Yeah, you can tell she's like a little scared and a little confused. This is like textbook, date rape. Like, she has not consented, but she hasn't said no. So he is thinking that it's okay, which is not right. Okay. Obviously,
it's not okay.
Yeah. So like, you want a yes, you don't want not a no.
Right. Silence does not necessarily imply acceptance.
Right. So he kind of lays her down and unbuckles his pants and everything. He's on top of her at this point. Then, like, as he starts actually raping her, she starts to say no. So if there was any question in his mind that he shouldn't be doing this, at this point, he definitely knows she does not want this. But he covers her mouth and he keeps going.
Well, so, Norma ain't a punk. So Norma bites the piss out of his hand.
He covers her mouth. She bites like his palm. He sort of starts like struggling with her, and in the process, like, ends up knocking her unconscious. Yeah. And, because he's terrible, her being unconscious is not enough for him to, like, give up on what he had planned. Right. So he finishes, gets up to leave, but he does cover her up first. So, like, there's this sense of, like, he feels a little bit ashamed about what he did, but, he still did it.
Right.
Obviously, that does not improve the situation at all. So then he...
Oh, he gets off on his motorcycle. He's the guy on the motorcycle that...
yeah, exactly. So he takes off, and then we cut back to later in the shop, and he's talking to the clerk that he works with. He's kind of like, I'm getting sick of this town. I think I just want to leave.
Will you take care of my mom?
Yeah. And so she's like, kind of asks him some questions. She's just kind of like, what's going on? But he's kind of cagey about it. But he leaves. It seems like he's leaving for the day. He's not necessarily saying he's leaving forever.
Yeah. But he's just leaving for the day because mom's like, hey, you're going to come back for supper, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to have supper together. Yeah, he's all about it. He agrees to that.
But then, as he's, riding along the highway on his motorcycle, he starts being followed by an unmarked black van. And the van kind of like, taps his tire a couple times, makes him kind of swerve a little bit, and ultimately does run him off the road.
Right. Somehow manages to run him off the road into some sand without killing him.
Yeah, I mean, he's on a motorcycle and manages to survive being run off the road, which is, not an easy accomplishment.
Now, our friend here, Vicente, he rolls up and gets on his feet and says, hey, he calls the guy an asshole. And he's like, hey, asshole, why'd you do that? Instead of saying, this guy just actually tried to kill me, I need to run.
Yeah. So the man that gets out of the van it's Robert, but like he's
clearly wearing a mask.
Yeah, it's like I mean, like with his surgical stuff, like he's got some pretty high quality mask stuff, but you can still tell enough facial features that it's definitely still, it's still Antonio Banderas.
Right. But also, he's got a gun.
Yeah. And he just shoots Vicente, but it turns out that it's a tranq dart.
Right, yeah, it's a tranq dart. We're good.
Yeah, and so then he opens the back of the van, puts a little ramp, gets a ramp out, and so, like, obviously he's going to be making sure the motorcycle's not found.
Right.
And then it just kind of cuts away, so, like, we can assume he put the motorcycle and Vicente into the van, and then Vicente wakes up, and he is chained up in like a storage shed or some kind of cellar or something.
Yeah. Well, when I first saw it, okay, this is my geek brain speaking. I was like, wow, that looks an awful like the Hunter's Dream from Bloodborne. With that, so sorry, that was just a aside from me. Yeah.
So, obviously he tries to, break free the chain, can't.
Well, luckily he has a big, tub of water beside him.
Yeah. So he kind of just dunks his head and drinks some. And then we see his mother, and she's talking to the police. They tell her that they found his motorcycle, it went off a cliff near the sea, and it's totally destroyed, but they think that his body probably washed away with the tides.
Right. But Mom knows. My son is alive. She knows in her bones. And then the cop's like, well, he was telling everybody he was going to leave town, so he probably skipped town.
Yeah, so one way or the other, they're not really pursuing
they don't
this.
Care.
Yeah. So then we cut to the scene of Robert going to visit Norma in the hospital, and he wants to talk to her.
Right.
Her doctor is like, she doesn't really want to be seen or touched. She's fully traumatized. Robert tries to go in and talk to her anyway, and she just kind of backs off and hides in a little
she freaks out.
closet.
She's nonverbal at this point, and she slowly creeps towards the closet like he is going to murder her because trauma do that sometimes, I guess.
Yeah. And so Robert goes back out and is talking to the doctor, and he's like, when she woke up from the trauma, you were the person standing over her. She thinks you had something to do with it. The trauma's there, and right now she just doesn't trust you.
Right. She doesn't trust men in general.
Yeah. And she was already traumatized from her mother's death.
Yeah.
So the layers of bad things happening to this poor girl.
We're just building on trauma upon trauma upon trauma.
Yeah. And in fact, we find out that she's already been at this hospital before this, and that this wedding they thought she was ready to be socialized. So this wedding was her first time out in public.
Oof.
So of course she doesn't, there weren't really she didn't make any bad decisions,
right.
But, obviously she doesn't have.
For her.
Yeah, and she wouldn't have any of the instincts that other girls might in that situation. But again, it's not like he gave off any signal that he was going to do this. So instincts or not, she wasn't in the wrong at all, to be very clear.
So then we cut to the medieval torture chamber full of axes, sickles, and a ridiculous amount of these implements.
Yeah.
Literally walls full.
Yeah, Robert, he sprays Vicente down with a hose. It kind of reminded me of the Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell.
Right.
It's sort of to clean him, but also sort of to hurt him. Yeah. Why not both kind of thing.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm going to move you closer to the table. You'll be more comfortable there.
And of course, Vicente's like, maybe you could just let me out. Maybe give me some food. You don't have to just tie me to the table. And he's like, nah, you're good.
Yeah.
You'll enjoy the table a lot more.
And Vicente, he keeps saying, I don't know what's happening. I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
And it's the way he says it, it's unclear if he truly believes that he didn't do anything or not.
Right.
But obviously he did.
Yeah.
And so then later we see Norma's funeral, and the doctor is sort of trying to comfort Robert, and he's like, I'm so sorry, we did everything we could.
Well, our
and
boy
Robert's
Robert's ice fucking cold. He's like, you didn't do enough, and you didn't do good enough.
Yeah, he's like, I hold you responsible. This is your fault, and I'm never going to forgive you for it.
Right. Oof.
Yeah, so Robert's having a hard time right now too, obviously.
Right.
So then we see him back later with Vicente, and he is shaving his face with a straight razor in a very ominous, intimidating way.
Well, he also calls in his friend Fulnacio, and he's like, hey, bring the team. You're going to bring the team tonight, okay?
Yeah. And so he's talking to Vicente, and he's like, so my daughter died. Tonight I buried her. And then he
Well, hold on. This is a bit that I have to do. Vicente's like, so why did you shave me after all this? I love Robert's reaction. That's a good question. Hey, I'm going to put this aftershave on you. Can you tell me, does it smell like chloroform? And wraps it around his face in a cloth. He doesn't actually say that does this smell like chloroform to you. But yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, he knocks out Vicente and takes him to this, his surgical lab in the basement.
Straps him down.
Yeah, and so his whole group of medical assistants arrive and all kind of scrub in for surgery, wash up.
By the way, can we talk about how they I guess they were just fucking around a little bit earlier because they're like, hey, listen, we've got to come up with this cover story about why we're late. We're going to say there were 2 accidents on the road here.
Yeah, that was such a weird little aside. And but they get
Bob
there,
likes
he's like,
punctuality. Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, he's gonna be mad. He'll ask, and he does.
Yep.
And they give him the alibi, and he buys it, or at least moves on.
Right.
So they're all kind of getting scrubbed in, putting on the gowns and the masks and everything. And they're like, he's already unconscious. Like, what's going on here? And Robert's like, this is a rush kind of hush hush job. He wants the procedure. We just need to get it taken care of.
Well, Fulnacio's like, wait a second, this dude's young, like, for this procedure. Like, so, I mean, why are we doing
and Robert's kind of just like, yeah, I got this under control. Just trust me. And they're like,
he wants
okay.
This. He wants this.
You're the boss.
Yeah.
And then we just cut to Vicente waking up, and Robert's sitting there next to him, and he's like, so you had a vaginoplasty?
Yeah. Jeez, oh, Pete. Like, I mean, I understand the punishment aspect there. Like, I get it. But, man, that's extreme.
Yeah, this whole
This is uncomfortable.
aspect of this story is, I mean, yeah, obviously this is like, you hurt a woman, so I'm going to make you have this female anatomy so that you can feel the same vulnerability or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is
A
also
little extreme.
Yeah, this is taking away someone else's bodily autonomy and their sense of self.
Yeah.
And like, this is a different kind of sexual assault, basically. And in fact, not only was the procedure an assault, but like, Robert is like, so the thing with this process is, if you want, like, it won't heal correctly and you'll be in really bad shape if you don't use these dilators. So he gives him a set of vaginal dilators, which are just dildos of varying sizes, and he's like, you're gonna have to start with the small one, and it's gonna hurt really bad, and you just keep using it, and you're gonna have to move up through the process, and if you don't do this, you're not gonna heal correctly, and it's going to cause you a lot of health issues. So basically, I'm now forcing you to sexually assault yourself over and over again, or else
you'll die.
So terrible stuff here.
Yeah. And obviously Vicente is fucking terrified, as he should be. Or
oh, absolutely.
Yeah, they should be, I guess, but that's
that's and so then Vicente is like, I want to go home. And Robert's like, oh, no,
we're just
getting started. Yeah. You're not going to be going home for a while.
Yeah.
And, Vicente's like, why did you do this? And Robert's like, you raped my daughter.
Right.
How have you not figured this out, that this is what's going on? And Vicente's like, I don't think I did that, but I was on a lot of pills that night.
Right. And Robert's like, no, you absolutely did.
Mm-hmm. So whether he's correctly saying that he doesn't remember, again, consent, and like, if you're on enough drugs that you don't know what you're doing,
maybe
then
you're not
you shouldn't be
either.
in you shouldn't be in these situations. Then we cut to
Vicente and
Robert.
Robert has Vicente in a plastic mask. However, Vicente looks a lot different now.
So there's a lot going on here, and
another warning
Robert's like,
that Robert's groping Vicente's new breasts.
Yeah, and Robert's like, the skin is healing nicely, the scars will go away soon, and here is a body stocking. It will help protect the skin and help with the healing.
Yeah,
and this first one is like all black. It's not the like nude colored one that we've had previously.
Yeah, so by the way, if you don't know, it's going to be spelled out more in depth in a moment, but Vicente is Vera.
And he tells her, like, this is your second skin. And so at this point, now that we know that Vera and Vicente are the same person, we get into like the pronouns thing, and just like, this is almost like the opposite of a trans story, or like because
a person
Vicente,
who knew their gender identity is then forced into another that they don't know.
Yeah, so like Vera is basically like a trans man. Like, it's a man for all intents and purposes that to the outside world looks like a woman. So I feel like at this point we should use he him for this person, because
makes sense to me.
Because this is Vicente. So Robert helps Vicente into the body stocking. He calls it a second skin, and once he's all dressed up,
he has a problem with the zipper.
And he's like, so can you zip me up? And while that's going on, he knees Robert in the balls.
Elbows him in the gut and then knees him right in the balls.
Fair
play to you.
I mean, like, obviously, like, nobody's coming out of this movie looking great, but like in this case, I understand you want to get out, and you should want to get out.
Right.
So he's running through the house trying to get out, and Robert just like pulls out a remote and just starts locking down the exterior doors of the house remotely.
And not normal locks, mind you. These are like super bank vault deadbolt locks.
Yeah, this is like the, all those scenes at the beginning of The Purge,
Right.
basically. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. And so, like, Robert comes out of the room, and he's, like, up on a balcony, and Vicente is, like, on the lower floor
Yeah.
holding a knife and is like, I'll stab you if you don't give me the key.
Right, give me the key or I'll
out.
come up there and stab you. And Robert's like, no, you won't.
Yeah, you can't do anything. And then Robert even, like, he pulls out a gun and is like, yeah, you've brought a knife to a gunfight, basically.
Yeah, this will trank you, and then we'll just start over from scratch. Well, Vicente realizes that at this point, there's only one way out for Vicente with this knife.
Yeah,
Remember that thing about the jugular?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, Vicente's like, I'm going to slit my throat and take your only toy away. And Robert's like, no, you won't. And, yep,
Right?
he will.
Yep.
So he slits his throat, and then it immediately cuts to Robert surgically stitching up the slit throat.
Yep.
Yeah, and he even goes so far as to be like, you were lucky. And I don't think Vicente feels so lucky at this moment.
Nope. Now we're cutting to some weeks later.
Yeah, and for that whole previous scene, I don't think we mentioned it, but Vicente is in this sort of like elaborate sort of like white face mask that's like silicone or something, or some kind of like healing something or other.
Yeah.
But so now Robert's removing all the masks, and now we see the Vera we've seen from the beginning of the movie. This is an actress, it's a different person playing this character, and Robert's like, I can't really call you Vicente anymore, so from now on your name's Vera.
Vera, yeah.
So, like, not only are your gender has been changed without your consent,
Your name.
now I am giving you a name that you don't get to choose, and so...
But hey, I've got a consolation prize for you. I've taken everything else away. I'm going to give you 3 really pretty dresses. Won't you like that?
Yeah. Yeah, and so then we see Vicente alone in this room just destroying the dresses.
Rips them apart. With teeth and everything.
Yeah, just tears them into like tiny little shreds, and then like just vacuums up all the destroyed.
I appreciate how Robert has a extendable shop vac in his house, in that one room.
Of course, like, this sort of like nods back to the fact that, Vicente worked in a dress shop. Mm-hmm. Vicente was familiar with dresses and had that conversation with with his coworker where she was like, if you like that dress so much, why don't you wear it? And so now...
that'll happen later. But let's talk about there was an outline of a woman's head in like the dress shop where we first saw Vicente, and it was actually over his head. So I'm like, ooh, that was a clever thing that the director did.
Oh, yeah, that's nice.
Yeah. Well... I wouldn't call it nice, but
yeah, it's thoughtful.
Decent,
you can tell this movie that it is very thoughtful. Like everything is there for a reason. It's unpleasant on purpose. Like this isn't the kind of like sometimes you watch an exploitation movie and you're like, that was just gross, and the people who made it, I don't know what their motivation was. But in this case, he wants you to think, he wants you to be unnerved by what's happening.
Right,
like
I feel
it's
like
not.
It's a thoughtful exploration into kind of gender and horror, body horror, and
yeah. So then we have Vicente, like now just kind of trapped in the room that we've seen from the beginning of the movie. And he's got a little TV that he can watch. And it's sort of like a curated kind of deal where like you only get certain channels or certain options. And he kind of flips through.
He's also receiving a bunch of makeup in his dumbwaiter now with a book on how to do that.
Yeah, obviously not interested in the makeup.
Please take this back. I don't want it.
Yeah. So he's watching the TV, and you're getting a lot of footage of leopards chasing and killing gazelles, which kind of feels like, you had the tiger man chasing the woman at the beginning. Like, so, there's this animals chasing animals, killing animals and kind of thing.
Then kind of a weird student film of a guy kind of laying down and putting on a crown and stuff like that. That's kind of odd.
Yeah, and then we get a instructional yoga video.
Hey!
So, yeah, so now, things are falling into place. We're seeing where, the dots are connecting from the beginning of the movie. Vicente, being trapped in this small space and unable to really do anything, uses yoga as a way to exercise and clear his mind.
Well, not only that, but I guess it's one of the makeup pens starts writing on the walls with that and doing art.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it starts with just like, the prison like tally marks of like how long he's been there. Right. And then, it slowly evolves to where he's writing poetry
Libra de yoga.
Yeah, and like there's a lot of stuff where it says over and over again, like, I breathe, I know that I breathe, opium helps me forget. You see a lot. And then there's also just like dates. Like he moves from like the tally marks to like literally writing every single day as it passes.
Yeah, once he finds out exactly what day it is. But speaking of that, Maria just arrives at El Cigarral.
Yeah, so Robert has hired her on. Like, as we mentioned, she was like the childhood nanny that he had, and, at some point had left his family's service. And yeah, he's bringing her back on, and, she's supposed to just help around the house. We also see that another thing that's on Vicente's TV is somebody doing sort of slideshows of doll art, like human dolls made of burlap. And
it's actually from the artist Louis Bourgeois.
So obviously, this is where Vicente had the inspiration to start doing that himself as well. Mm-hmm. Then we get a title card. It just says back to present day. Mm-hmm. So now we've got Vicente as Vera, like helping Maria in the kitchen.
Preparing breakfast.
Yeah, and it seems like suddenly, he has more free reign of the house.
Right. It almost seems like at this point he has turned into her.
Mm-hmm. Goes back up to the old, like, Vera's old room and sees all the notes on the wall and kind of like looks at it like, that's my past. Like, I'm a different person now. And gets like a breakfast tray, takes it to Robert. And when the tray's being set down, like, the camera just like lingers for a second too long on the knife to show you that, like, they're trusting Vicente with a knife. Like, Maria let him have it, and Robert is not, uncomfortable with the fact that they're carrying it around. So, like, it seems like everybody's gotten to this equilibrium, and, everything's fine now. After Robert and, had that moment cuddling after the death of Zeka or whatever, they've kind of all bonded. So they kind of have a conversation there where they both are kind of like, so the conversation we had last night, like, are we standing by that? Is everybody, is
that promise
in the moment, for
real?
Yeah, and so we find out that, like, Robert promised there would be no more locked doors. Mm-hmm. That that quote unquote Vera would have free reign of the house,
right? Well,
and in exchange,
Vera would stay.
Yeah, in exchange, that was the promise that Vera Vicente gave back, that she would never leave. And Maria is still kind of skeptical about this. Yeah. Like,
she's gonna run, and this is gonna fall on your head, Robert.
But Robert's like, no, everything's going to be fine. In fact, here's my credit card. Why don't you guys go on a shopping trip? Because I trust that, everybody will come back. Everything will be fine.
Right. Well, Maria doesn't exactly trust it completely because she does pack her pistol. And she's like, listen, if she wanted to, she could push me down and just run.
Yeah.
And nothing we could do about it.
Yeah. And so while they're gone, one of Robert's, like, surgical assistant guys shows up, and Robert's working in the garden.
Yeah, his buddy Fulgencio.
Yeah, and so Robert's like, so after I talked to the president of the university, I'm done with surgery. I'm not doing any of this black market stuff at the house anymore. And he's like, well, can we just rent the clinic then? Like, you don't even have to be involved, but we need that surgical space.
This place is really nice. Yeah, you've got all that equipment.
Yeah, it's all sterile and everything. Like, if we're going to be doing these black market procedures, like, we want to do it somewhere safe and clean and
out of the way for our patients, right? They want to recover.
And Robert's like, no, I don't want any part of that anymore.
We're out of that game.
Yeah, so he's kind of like, well, since you're resistant, let me show you this article I found in the paper.
Yeah, something really
about a bunch of missing people.
Yeah, you notice that kid, that one who says he's who's 27 years old, and the one that we performed that fucking wild vaginoplasty on without giving him any hormones? Yeah. That looks awful familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah, and Robert's like, yeah, I know his family thinks he's missing, but what actually happened was, he ran away to L.A. He's a porn star now.
He got really buff, and went to L.A. to make some porn. With his new
it's almost like he's describing like a Buck Angel sort of thing, but like a sort of, again, reverse version of that. So obviously he's not buying it. Yeah. He's like, I think that you use Vicente as a lab rat.
Yeah, you're using it to test your skin on him.
Yeah, and so Robert pulls out a gun and is like, get out of here. I'm done dealing with you.
By the way, I like how he holds it in like a gangster pose. That's from his Desperado days, I'm sure.
Yeah. But before the guy can leave, Vera walks in and is like, I am here of my own free will. I've always been a woman. Robert helped me achieve my goals. This is what I wanted. Mm-hmm. And the man's like, okay, I guess. And he leaves. Right. But then Vera looks down while she's, after the man leaves, and sees Vicente, the picture in the paper, and you can tell immediately, like, it's jarring. Like, again, talking about, like, Gal seeing her reflection in the mirror, this is kind of an echo of that, where, like, you have, this female appearing Vera looking at this picture of what
used to be.
Yeah, what she feels like she is still on the inside, right. And, or what he is.
Maybe it's kind
truly.
of like they've become a monster, kind of like history repeating itself. Nah.
Yeah. Yep. This actress is great because, like, this moment it's really subtle. It's just really quick. And then, is just like, can I have a cigarette? And, like, starts smoking, and they kind of kiss. And, like, it feels like maybe it just kind of upset Vera in the moment, but she's moving forward or whatever.
Well, nope, they're going right at it now. It's time to make love. And that's what they do.
Yeah. So they start having sex, but it hurts too much. Mm-hmm. And, so...
I like that Robert's like, well, let's try doggy style. Maybe that'll hurt less. And Vera's like, nope, I think that'll hurt more.
Yeah. So Vera says, like, actually, it works out because when we were out shopping today, I bought some lube, so I'll go downstairs and get it. And, Robert's like, all right, yeah, sounds good to me. I'll wait here for you. So then downstairs we see Vera with a purse, and she puts the lube in there, but she also puts a gun in there.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And again, we get looking at Vicente in the paper.
But not only that, she kisses the image of Vicente. Kind of like maybe he is kissing himself goodbye.
Yeah. So, obviously then heads back upstairs, and this movie doesn't really, like, do much with, like, threats. Like, if somebody has a gun, they're gonna use it. Strolls right in, pulls the gun, and just shoots him.
But, well, he's kind of like, this is a joke, right? But no. And then he's like, you promised. And I feel really bad for Robert there.
Yeah, I mean, like, this movie is just so complicated. Like, there's just so many things happening at the same time, and layers of people's emotions, and people who do bad things for good reasons and good things for bad reasons. And it's one of the most emotionally, like, deep movies we've dealt with on this show, for sure.
It is like emotionally complex and very resonant, for sure.
Yeah, like, I feel like we could talk about it for another hour or two and not even scratch the surface.
Yeah.
But, so there's obviously the sound of a gunshot. Maria comes upstairs to check on the noise.
Well, she's packing heat, too.
Yeah, and Vicente is like, you need to leave.
Yeah,
like,
go back to bed. That was nothing. Nothing happened here.
Yeah, like, because, like, Maria is outside of the room. She's not seeing what's happened.
Right.
But she kind of forces her way in the room and sees that.
It seems like first she's like, oh, okay, I'll just walk off, and then just turns around and busts in the door.
And, she sees that Robert is dead, and so Vicente doesn't hesitate.
Well, Maria is like, where are you, you bitch? Because she's going to shoot Vera/Vicente.
And it turns out that where that bitch is under the bed.
Yep, so you just see hands sticking out, pop!
Yeah, and for, like, not being able to see under, like, the dust ruffle of the bed. Mm-hmm. Yeah, nails Maria and climbs out from under the bed.
But as Maria drops down, she's like, I basically knew this was how this was going to turn out.
Yeah. So then we have Vicente getting dressed, in a dress, and leaving, and then you see her arrive at the dress shop.
Right. It's looking super nice now.
Yeah. It's definitely, like, things have moved up in the world in the time that Vicente's been away. Mm-hmm. So Vicente sees his mother. She's kind of like in a back room
with Christina going over some bills.
Yeah, and you can instantly see just, like, tears welling up in his eyes. And Christina comes out thinking this is just a customer and obviously does not recognize Vicente.
There's been a few changes for Vicente over the last couple of years.
Yeah, and Vicente says what's happened. Like, I was kidnapped. I'm Vicente.
I was forced to have a sex change.
Yeah, and Christina's like, she's not necessarily skeptical. She's kind of like, this is a lot of information. I can't quite handle this.
Well, Vicente says, that dress I really wanted you to wear? It turns out I'm wearing it. I liked it so much.
Yeah. And so, Vicente's like, it was just me and you in the shop then. Like, no one else heard that conversation, so it has to be me.
Right. And so Christina's on board already.
Yeah. And so Christina's like, hey, come here. And, so Vicente's mom walks out and she's like, what happened? Like, she can tell, you've got these two people here, like, tears in their eyes, and, like, everything's very heavy in the air. And then,
we end on...
Yeah, I'm Vicente.
Dun, dun, dun. Abrupt ending, kind of, more or less. But it was the perfect ending, actually.
Yeah, I mean, this is the moment where the female-bodied character we've been seeing from the beginning declares, like, I am not Vera, I am Vicente, and no matter what my body looks like, no matter what you're seeing here, I'm still Vicente.
Right. So that's wild.
So yeah, it's a heavy movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those kind of movies that it's like, it has a message, but it's not beating you over the head. Like, you just kind of have to sit with that and think about everything. Think about consent. Think about gender. What does that all mean? And yeah, like the end credits even like roll over just like clips of DNA, and it's just kind of like, it just makes you kind of sit there with like, what is reality? What is truth? What is, what are we? And are we just DNA? Are we a soul? Like, what makes us who we are? Is it the body? Is it, yeah, it's heavy, and I feel like I'm gonna be thinking about this movie for a while.
Yep, that's true. I mean, Pedro Almodóvar, like, it's like he was thinking about all the stuff that we're currently dealing with in America, and did it in the most thoughtful way, I think.
Yeah, I mean, like more than a decade before everything that's going on in the past, couple weeks, which, is not to say that things were all well and good when he made this, obviously, but yeah, it's definitely, it feels like it's hitting really close to home at the moment.
So yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's definitely, I appreciate the complex and multifaceted angles that this thing's going for. Just like, hey, if somebody does something bad, do they deserve this punishment? Really? What is a punishment that goes too far?
Yeah, and I mean, this is one of those where it's like the punishment fits the crime, eye for an eye kind of style.
Yeah, a little too much, too strong.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I feel like you could have this whole conversation, like, we kind of focused on like bodily autonomy and gender in our conversation, but you could probably go back and do this whole thing again, talking about like criminal justice and the carceral state, and like it'd be a whole different episode.
Ain't that it?
But like, yeah, there's just so much in here, and I feel like this is what a Frankenstein movie can be now. Right. Like, this is telling a story in a way, like, this is using a story we know that we're all familiar with and kind of comfortable with in a way that makes us uncomfortable again and makes us question our biases and our view on the world. And yeah, I mean, like, that's what really good sci-fi and horror does. Is it holds a mirror up to society and forces you to think about things that you just assume.
Yeah, it elevates the horror, as it were. I know elevated horror is a big thing, but yeah, it does. I mean, that's just how it goes. But also, I mean, did you know this was based on a book?
I saw that it was, but I have not read it.
Yeah, it's a French book called Tarantula, so that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, maybe we'll visit that down the road.
Oh, I don't know that I can, but I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. Depending on how closely it's following the book, I'm guessing it would also be a pretty difficult difficult read.
Yep. So, you know what I need? I need some levity now. Can we go to some levity? Can we maybe go on a road trip? I'm thinking, I know this nice little place in Transylvania around zip code 65000.
Yeah, so next week, obviously, we wanted to go much lighter after this. So we're doing the comedy Transylvania 65000, which is going to be a drastic departure from this, as we're going to need.
Right, and we may or may not talk about a certain individual who was in Seinfeld and in this movie. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, so we're excited about that. It should be a lot of fun. We can definitely use a lighthearted one after this.
Right.
But in the meantime, you can catch us on all of the socials, Twitter and Instagram. And I just started last night a Letterboxd account for us. So I've never done the Letterboxd thing. I keep notebooks of every book and movie that I read and watch, and so Letterboxd has never really appealed to me because I already have my own sort of system.
Yeah.
But I thought, it might be fun for people to see us rate the movies on this little thing. So I'm only like halfway through catching up with everything we've done. But if you do Letterboxd and want to follow us on there, we'll follow you back, and we'll just kind of play around on there a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, follow us on all those places, but most importantly,
we got a Patreon, baby.
Yeah. So definitely join us there if that sounds like something you want to do. We've got $3 tier, we've got a $5 tier, so we're not asking too much from you, but obviously if you can't afford it, we're happy to have you here in the free feed. But if you'd like to throw us a couple bucks, we're gonna be doing a lot of bonus episodes there.
Listen, we've got a bunch of evil plans. We need funding. being evil geniuses, being the mad scientist and the mad assistant. We've got to have those funds, and research grants aren't coming in like they used to.
Yeah. We actually did. We're up to 2 patrons at this point. So we've got
Hayden.
Yep, Hayden's there, and then we've got our other friend Santos, who we've been talking to a lot on social media. Santos usually has some good recommendations and little kind of clips and things that he finds. So we're excited to have him on board at the Patreon.
So much. Especially the extra Santo information that Santos is providing.
Yeah. Yep. So welcome, and we'd love to see more of you join us there, and we'll be 2 or 4 episodes depending on your tier. So you'll get lots of extra content over the course of the month. I hate using the word content, but you'll get lots more episodes. So yeah, we'd love to see you there.
And anything else we got?
I think that covers it.
Well, in that case, as always, to be continued.
Looks like you survived another episode. The Freaking Cast is a production of FCR Media. It's hosted by Anthony Bowman and Eric Velasquez. Follow us on Twitter at The Freaking Cast, or send us a letter at thefreakingcast@gmail.com. Our cover art is by Amanda Keller. You can find her at Keller Illustrations on Instagram. Our theme music is by Vivek Abhishek. Thanks for listening.